everybody. I can't help but smile when I hear that music because it means we're in for another episode of the Rec Poker Podcast. This is the Forums edition where we take a hand from our forums at rec.poker and talk about it here on the show with this panel of recreational poker wizards. I'm just one. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game. And you can learn about me and everyone else on the Wrecking Crew by going to rec.poker/crew. Or you could just listen up because you're about to meet a few of these awesome members right now. Gang, why don't you tell Rec Poker Nation where they can get a hold of you?
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me on 5B5 on Twitter and 5x5 on PokerStars.
I'm John Somsky. I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Keith Brandt, and I'm Monkey System everywhere.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I am Fergie56 on the home game, Pet Vet everywhere else.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 just about everywhere.
Yeah, you guys are so smooth having your one handle everywhere like true professionals. Nicely done. Other true professionals that we should draw attention to are the amazing crew at Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And of course, Website Mark from Website Amp, who's another sponsor for the show here and who we literally could not do what we do without. So thank you, Mark, for your continued support and for John and everyone else at Running Aces for all the fun stuff you do over there. So every week, we are, just like every week, it's Monday night. We're recording this after the Chats edition. We are playing in the nightly home game, trying to steal each other's chips. And just like every week, we're taking a post from the Rec Poker forums. This week, we're taking one from our very own Chris Jones, who was playing in the Venom the other day and got dealt pocket queens. Yeah, we love pocket queens. But then everyone and their uncle flats. Ugh. And we don't like that so much. So, Chris, why don't you take us through the post that you put into the Rec Poker forums here?
Well, this came out. So, if you don't know, you're not really following, Venom is the biggest tournament that ACR puts on. They put it on a couple times a year. Big buy-in with deep structures, long levels. So that's something to keep in mind here. We're really deep and we're early. This is level 3 of this tournament. So here we are, and we're sitting in early position. I think let me just look at this just to make sure I'm right. I think I'm not under the gun, but second under, yeah. So I'm under the gun 1, and I open with pocket queens. And then this cascade of calls starts happening. The player to my left calls, the player to their left calls, and then ultimately the button also calls. The 2 blinds fold, surprisingly. But so we go 4 ways to a flop, and the flop comes 9-6-4 rainbow, 9 of clubs, 6 of diamonds, 4 of hearts, and we are holding the queen of hearts and the queen of diamonds. We are first to act. We have 3 players behind us, left to act. It's a board that we're kind of like it, but kind of don't based on those calls. So let's start the conversation.
Yeah.
What do we do here?
It's non-controversial open, obviously, pocket queens. And then when you get called and you get to the flop, you're out of position, multi-way, 4-handed. And again, for the audience, the flop is 9-6-4 rainbow. So the question is to c-bet or not to c-bet, right, Chris? And I guess if so, to what size?
Yep, that'll be the first question. I mean, I'll tell you as played. Should I?
No, let's talk about the pros and cons. So you're in a multi-way pot. You're out of position. It's a relatively large pot, I guess, just because. Well, no, it's multi-way, so it's as big as it would be typically. It wasn't a particularly large open.
Right.
It's what were you, before we say what you did, what were your considerations in the moment?
I think this is a spot, first of all, where we have to remember that we're extraordinarily deep, and that goes sort of 2 ways here. Like, we do not want to potentially take a strong hand and build a pot, but this isn't like we're 20 or 30 big blinds deep. We cannot possibly just go broke with queens here with 150 big blinds or whatever we've got here. We've got to, there are some considerations we've got to take with a hand like this going multi-way. And this is a kind of board that's gonna, I think, be intriguing. One of the things I would think about with this, if I was one of the players behind me who had flatted, this is a very intriguing board to check raise, I think, especially to that early position and with bluffs. The kinds of a lot of gut shots are on this board potentially. There's a lot of pairs that are in between these that aren't sets but are kind of like interesting check raises as well. So I think there's a decent number of those that we'll be facing, and we have to remember we're up against some really strong opponents. I looked up one of the other considerations that we'll have to just take into play as we talk about this hand is, I when I showed up at this table, I looked up everybody, and there was probably one weak link at the table, but the rest of these players are crushers. They're killers. They're top players in the player pool. So, and which you'd expect at a tournament this size, but I was hoping for maybe a few soft spots. And there weren't as many as I was hoping for. So that's another consideration as we kind of approach this hand.
Sorry, Chris, is this a re-entry? And what is the buy-in?
It's $2,600, so it does allow for re-entries, but I satellited in and I was not planning to buy in. So
right, but some of these crushers might be
correct
to buy in.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And my only note here, I think you are the first player to act, so it would be if I'm reading this correctly, so it would be a raise. They're not going to be able to check raise you, but they can 2-bet you.
Correct. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good. All right. So I think those are all like, this is the kind of board where they're going to have sets. They're going to have strong draws, although they can't, it's a rainbow, so they can't have a flush and a straight draw. Some of these players might even have 2-pair in some suited combos if if they're getting really good odds in position there. I could see that. Rob, you're shaking your head. What are you thinking here when you're in this spot?
Not with the range. If they're crushers, they're not playing ranges that include those hands.
Yeah,
I think the button might.
Yeah, the button might have 7-8, but they're not going to have any 2-pair combos in that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're probably right. That would have to be 9-6 or 6-4. Those are pretty
right, and they're not going to have any of those. Yeah, so they're going to have a lot of suited aces that call. They're going to have all the pairs below the queens. The ones above are probably going to re-raise you pre-flop, right?
I think Ace nines might even raise pre-flop, re-raise pre-flop when you're this deep. I wouldn't be surprised with the crushers re-raising nines. Yeah, they
could, but they could also flat there.
Yeah,
especially the button. I mean, the more players that call, the more risk. I mean, you're risking a lot more chips by re-raising with nines on the button, for instance. When 2 people have called between you, that's suicide. So, yeah. So I think there's just a heck of a lot of pairs and a lot of suited aces and some big suited Broadway type cards.
A lot of Broadway.
Calling this.
A lot of Broadway.
Yep.
And a lot
suited
of nothing
Broadway,
on
especially.
Here. Yep.
So does that incline you holding pocket queens then? Or I guess we should also be thinking about, like, how balanced do we want to be in this place? Is this a spot where we're actually going to be playing in a balanced fashion, or are we just going to kind of play our hand? Chris, when you're in a tournament like this that's kind of above, our comfortable typical buy-in, do you adjust how you think about those kind of spots? How worried are you about playing in a long-term balanced way here?
The only thing that I say to me, it's less about the buy-in and it's more about the structure. Mm-hmm. And so when I go into a tournament like this, the thing that I just remind myself and I say before I start is be patient. You have time. There are lots of opportunities here that, and in fact, if I double up right here, it's almost meaningless. It's nice. It's great. Hey, let's get a good start going. But that's sort of meaningless versus being crippled here is something I really don't, or going out here is not something I want to have happen. And so like it's that sort of like, it's just a reminder myself, like I can be patient. The structure of this allows me to play optimally. So that was more than the buy-in is what I'm kind of telling myself as I begin it.
Mm-hmm. I like that attitude. That like being patient is like super important in these kind of events, but that's different than being passive.
Correct.
Like, so I just feel that this is, in my opinion, I would 100% c-bet queens here, as I would aces, kings, ace 9, 9, 10, tens, jacks. I would be c-betting all of those hands. I'd be c-betting my pocket fours, pocket sixes, maybe checking my pocket nines, but I would be c-betting all of those, and I'd be c-betting them for a fairly decent size because we're facing three players and because we're so deep. So I would c-bet here, because if we don't c-bet here, we're never going to have any information. We're so underrepresented in the strength of our hand. If we check here, that unless we're planning to check raise ourselves, that I think that it's just so hard to get information if we don't c-bet here. And if we c-bet and face a lot of action, I'm fine with getting away from the hand. I don't ever think I'm ever going broke on this board with queens when we're this deep. Yes, when we're 30 big blinds deep, but not when we're this deep. Yeah.
Chris, do you have a c-betting range here and queens isn't in it, or is this just a checking range spot for you given the
I would say,
circumstances?
first of all, my c-betting strategy shrinks considerably. Like my percentage that I c-bet a board shrinks the more players you add to a board.
Yep,
so
that makes sense.
Heads up, queens, I'm c-betting this 100% of the time. Against two opponents, I'm c-betting it probably 85 to 90% of the time. Once we get three villains and I'm the first one to act, now I'm probably then it also becomes pretty board dependent, but this is a board where I am checking a lot. I'm checking a lot of my range here. And in fact, one of the things I like about having that checking range here is that we can I think our opponents are going to bet a decent amount here, and especially the button if it gets to them. And I think we can shorten this hand. If it checks through, great. I think I've got the best hand almost 95% of the time. If somebody bets, I have a lot more information there that I can then react to, and I still am shortening the hand. And if there's a lot of action behind me, then that's also information. So I disagree that we're not going to get information by not c-betting. But I can see the point of c-betting, but I think we get information either way.
I don't think that this board hits the opponents that are calling very often. Ooh. I just don't. I think they have ace 4, ace 6, ace 9 in their ranges suited.
For sure.
I think they have 7, 8 suited. And I think that sometimes they'll have the pocket pairs, but often they've just got Broadway here. Mm-hmm. So I think when we c-bet, we might get a heads up, for instance. Like we're going to fold out some players and now we get some information. More information.
Maybe. So if you're the question, the players that I think are the person. So first of all, remember, we're an early position open, and then we get two players, the next two players over from us calling. That to me, especially that second player, if they're any good, should be a very narrow range. I shouldn't really include hands like Queen Jack offsuit, right? Like I doubt we're going to see
suited though. Suited.
Maybe, but that even becomes a lot of players are going to 3-bet that in that spot.
But even good players will when they're this deep will just call with a lot of these speculative hands.
Maybe, yeah, I agree. You will see some of that, but I think you're going to see less and less of it. And you're going to see a lot of low pocket pairs. You're going to see a lot of hands that, if we're going to see Queen Jack, then we are going to see like 7-8 suited or some of those kinds of things as well. I don't know. And I think what we can do still by checking this is we're not necessarily losing. We're not going to get 3 folds, right? So what we're really trying to do is isolate and get this sort of heads up, probably.
Right.
But when we do a C bet here, and that's an okay strategy. But then, so are you calling a single check raise?
Depends on the size.
Yeah.
So say we easily called a half pot bet here, or just under half pot bet, right? So if we had bet half pot instead of just calling the half pot bet, then we get raised and another caller, then maybe we can just fold this hand.
Right. Because
there's just too much action there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I just think that there's more information to be had sooner if we just see bet here.
Sure.
So what ends up happening, so Chris does check, and it goes check behind Chris, and then the third player bets about 40% pot, something like that, a little over a third. The last player folds, and then we're facing this bet of about 40% or something like that, and feels like a natural call. Does anyone on the panel want to advocate for folding or raising in this spot?
I like a raise better than a call, personally.
Yep.
Just again to get information from and fold out the other players. Like this player could be doing this with a 9, a single 9.
Ace 9 suited.
Ace 9
suited.
Likely. Yeah. Pocket 10s, pocket jacks.
Yep. Yeah, some hands
7,
that
8.
might even continue to our raise, which we're beating, which is nice.
And because it's a small bet, we don't have to do a large raise. Like we can do a fairly small raise as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind the call as played, but I would prefer a raise here because again, we're so under repped our hand, and and because we're out of position, I think it's better to take the aggression. So we have cards and we have aggression on our side, but we don't have position.
Right.
So you need 2 out of 3 to continue in the hand. So I prefer to show aggression.
And it's a board that we don't have a lot of natural check raises. Like we're not going to have a lot of natural check raises anyway as the pre-flop raiser. But even when we do, there's not going to be many of them on boards like 9, 6, 4 rainbow, I don't think. What about you guys? Do you guys have a check raising range in a spot like this with that under the gun opening range? It's going to be super small if we do, right?
There's this old adage about aces. You either win a small pot or lose a big one. And I think this is kind of the same situation. I think when you're this deep in a tournament that has this slow of a structure, you don't want to get jiggy right off the bat. You want to you keep the pot size under control so it doesn't get out of hand and you lose a heck of a lot more chips than you really need to. So I think keeping it under control is really what you need to do here. I mean, we got over 120 big blinds to start this hand. This is not the time to get crazy. I mean, if your chip stack's down around the 20 or 30 big blinds, hey, let's get crazy. Let's go nuts. But when you're at this deep a stack, you don't want to just, blithely throw chips away.
Right, which is why I like the C-bet, because you're controlling the pot size, controlling the C-bet size, and you get to see what happens after you bet here.
You still get to see that if you check.
You don't, because you're so under reps. It's just you don't know what to do. Because Kim, it looks like you have ace king or ace queen here.
So Kim, kind of what you're saying a bit is that you're under repping your hand by not C-betting to the point that it changes the action so that we're not actually getting the same kind of action, that like more honest action. We're inviting more action.
Right. We're not getting honest action. I think they're just saying he has nothing. He just has 2 overcards to this flop. And we're not even worried about this player.
But doesn't that also then, so I agree against some opponents that works really well. But I think against really competent opponents who are going to be check raising us on boards like this, which they see as disadvantageous boards to our opening ranges. I think
they will have more of nothing. They will have more nothing in their range.
Well, I mean,
more confident.
They'll probably.
I think you're getting in your head.
No. I think they'll be doing that in a balanced fashion. I agree. They'll have some gut shots in there. I think they'll have like more competent sort of like raises that are a balanced range that will include things like gut shots, probably their open-ended straight draws, some weird like pairs plus that have some blocker qualities, and then their sets. And it'll be probably that kind of range, right? And I think that with our queens, we're not going to know if we see bet here and we get check raised, which I think is going to happen a lot on this board.
There's no check raise
or raised, just raised.
Or raised.
Sorry, raised.
Yeah.
When we bet here, when we get raised, we're not going to learn. I mean, that's not. I think we're going to actually learn more by checking and reacting to the action, and knowing that we've got a strong hand that can call a lot of bets, and we can be ahead of hands that we're talking about, like ace nine suited, and we can and like the 7/8 of the world with our queens. If you happily get more chips in this pot, but we can see also. I mean, if another player bets and then I don't know. I like it multi-way when we're the first player to act to give our other opponents a chance to. Because so what are you doing this with ace king as well?
No, I'm checking ace king.
See, but that's then we've got a disaster in our hand, because now our checking range, you listed all our sets, all our strong hands, and so our checking range has nothing in it.
Yeah, I said pocket nine should be in our checking range.
Well, that's a pretty narrow band of like a bunch of crap.
One
and
hand.
the best possible hand, right?
Right. So I just don't like. No, I don't think. But I think we should also check ace king.
Yeah, but and then we're checking. Are we? But like, what is our checking range? If it's just pocket nines and then like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, are those all checks?
I mean, I think you can check raise your pocket sixes and pocket fours probably.
Okay, so we're checking all our sets.
Can. Right?
Yeah.
That's
I
such a
just
small part
think
of his
it's
range.
just we're so deep. Like it's just so hard to get information, and we don't have to put a lot of chips in this pot.
Right.
But we're just go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just going to ask. So looking over so Chris, when you're taking what sounds like a check call line here with a hand like queens, you're expecting, I think, to also call bets on the turn on favorable runouts, and
I may, if I can get this heads up after check calling, I may even take the lead on the turn.
Right.
I am not thinking I'm necessarily behind, especially if I can get this heads up. But I am trying to shorten the hand and limit the number of streets. I do not want to make this a 3-street hand if I can avoid it, because I think that this is a 2-street hand for me.
This is
so
great.
Are you c-betting? Are you c-betting 9-10, 9-8, the things that have gut shots now that need more protection?
Probably.
Like queens doesn't need as much
Yes.
protection, right? So
yeah,
you're
I would
c-betting.
probably lead one of those and be happy to, like, those are hands that I don't necessarily fear the check raise as much, and they do need more protection, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, cool. I just put it in the chat earlier. I love it when Kim and Chris disagree about something, because we're going to hear some really good arguments for both sides, and these two know how to disagree well. So that's great. It's great listening. I just want to shut up and sit back and listen to you guys talk about poker. It's fantastic.
I don't know what it means. Maybe I have no opinion on anything, but every time I listen to him, I said, "Oh yeah, I agree with that," and then listen to the other one. "Oh yeah, I agree with that."
Well, it's one of the great things.
Now.
It's one of those great things about poker, right? Is that there's not a lot of right or wrong answers. There's just different right answers, different wrong answers. Different ways at it. Yeah,
and you
Chris?
can even, like, the other thing is, like, you can look at solvers or tools like Range Trainer Pro or some of those out there. but like this is a 4-way. I mean, this is not
Right.
solved. This is like
Right.
this is a little. You got to kind of like figure this out.
So as played, so Chris the hero does call the small bet, and the next player behind actually
They check raise.
they check raise. Yes, there's the check. That's why we had check raises on the brain, because there was a check raise coming down and we knew it. So they check raise to let me just pull back up here, about 3 times the raise size, and the in position player calls, and then it's back to us. So we should just talk a little bit about what our options are here. Again, I just always like to explore the tree. We could fold, we could call, we could raise. I think raising at this point is out. Even though in absolute terms, come on, we've got an overpair, it's a dry board. There's lots of things that, you might say, oh, we've got a really good hand here. We're near the top of our distribution. We should be playing aggressively. I think given the action, you're just throwing yourself into a buzzsaw if you do that. Someone's going to have you dominated here.
I mean, the way I was thinking in game is there is like a perfect thread the needle moment where one of these players has 7-8 and one of them has ace-9 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we get it in and we're tripling up, right? But that is, I think, exceedingly rare.
This is a pretty small raise as well. This is a fairly small check raise after your call, right? Like,
that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's 3 times the bet size, but there's a lot of money in the pot now at this point.
A ton of money in your pot, and you're getting pretty good odds on a call.
Yeah, yeah.
He's inviting action. Yeah,
and he does not close the action though, so it's that original bettor is still going to get a chance to reopen the betting again if we do call. So that's a factor.
No, we close the action.
We do close. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. We're the last one. Okay. Well, that's true. That's true. Now, at that point, it feels like we're basically drawing to a set, right? Given the action, if we call here, we're not betting again in this hand, I assume. We might call more small bets, but that would be about it.
Right. If we call here, I think it's just we have to see what happens we have to always check the turn. And see what happens, right? Like we could be facing draws still. We could be facing pocket 10s, pocket jacks.
What draws does a check raiser have?
7-8.
Yeah, 7-8 exactly.
Of any
I
kind
guess.
of suits.
He doesn't call 7-8 pre-flop.
What? Yes, he does.
Solvers. No, he doesn't.
100%.
Not this. No, the button does, but not this guy.
The cutoff?
Guy does. It's not.
No,
in his
he's
range.
like he's like MP1.
Right, he's the hijack. Chris was the low jack. Or no, Chris was under.
It's even it's MP1. He's even earlier position than that.
He's the low jack.
Yeah.
I think all kinds of these good players will call 7-8 suited when they're this deep, when they look like it's going to go multi-way. I really do.
Yeah, he potentially could. It's not in a normal range that would be calling from that position that deep.
Yeah.
So I just looking at ranges like poker coaching, their GTO ranges, Range Trainer Pro, those 7-8 is not in his range at all.
In that position, you're saying he has to be in later position.
Low jack, in a later position, a button would definitely have 7-8. But this guy should never show up there with 7-8 unless he's just opening up his range really wide. And I don't know how wide you really want to open it up when you're that deep.
Well, and he might
into a lot of reverse implied odds situations.
And that player might not know who Chris Jones is, too. So I'm just saying, we don't know what the assumptions they're making
the player
about
at the table. They're like, "Oh, good, he's here."
They might not know. They might not know who they're dealing with.
Which is why they're all calling your opens.
Right. That's why they're all calling your opens in position. Yeah, that's right. We got a comment from Jack here in the chat. For one thing, maybe 7-8's his favorite hand. We don't know that. And another thing, that's right. If it's the right decision at the right time. If you make the same decision at the wrong time, it kills you. Yeah, that's it, Jack. Exactly. So we've made some arguments for calling, maybe some arguments for folding.
I would call this if the intervening player didn't call behind. this check raise. I would be calling this if this just came from this player, and then evaluate on the turn. But once that second player calls, that it's
one of them's got you beat.
Well, not only that, but you got equity issues now, because any equity you have in the hand is diluted by having two other players in it, and your ability to realize your equity is definitely at risk because you're totally out of position.
Yeah.
So you've got so many things going against you right now, and you're facing a lot of action. I just think that I
don't mind the fold here. I like the fold here, but I still think that I would have rather put my 11,000 in as a C bet rather than a call on the flop.
Fair enough. So then if you put your C bet in and you got raised by this player rather than check raised by them, and then
everyone else folded?
Well, no, then you have the intervening, you have an overcall. Now what are you doing with your queens?
We don't know we don't know.
Well, let's just say theoretically the second player raises us, and then the third player
he's got 7-8.
That's the whole point.
Has 7-8.
That's the whole thing. We don't know because we didn't see bet,
right?
So we don't know.
I know we don't know, but I'm saying if since you're advocating a line of leading here,
right? And this guy just calls.
No, he raises, and then the second player calls that raise. What are you doing with your queens then after you?
Well, it depends how much the raise is for.
Same numbers here that we've just seen, just a different way that the money has gone in.
I think I probably call here, but I don't mind a fold either. And that's like either way, it's fine.
Part of my worry about because I think once we start C betting, then I think we're more likely to do that, to like call, right? Like to carry us through,
get more money in. Yeah.
And then ultimately this is like kind of go broke with a hand like this. Like I'm not saying we would go broke, but I think we could lose a lot more by taking that line in a multi-way spot.
Yeah. I understand that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And ultimately, so we do make a fold there. We don't get to go to showdown, but it comes runner, queen. So, what a heartbreak there for Chris. No, it doesn't actually, but that would be that would be the right way to twist the knife, wouldn't it? Poker world.
We don't actually learn because ultimately the player that did initially check raised does shove on the river, and then the other player folds. So
when his 7-8 gets there,
because it does come.
Oh, the 10
on the river.
Yeah.
No, that's true. It was pocket 10s got there.
Yeah,
that's you know what he has? He's exactly 7-8 of clubs.
Yep. Yep. There
Turn
you go.
was a club, so he can just barrel, and then 10 gets him as straight on the river.
we cracked the code.
Could be.
So just go. I mean, I think it's a great
pocket 9s.
It's a great post, Chris, because it goes to show a super strong hand on a dry board. Being multi-way, being out of position, and then the way the action goes. It does come around, and this is another point that Rob was alluding to earlier. You're still on the flop. Well, you got 2 more cards to see and 2 more rounds of betting. So you can call this bet here, and you're gonna thread that needle like sometimes against some of these players. But lots of aces and kings can come, lots of 7s and 8s can come, and you can still get bluffed off too. So
let's talk for a second about the action here, even though we're not in the hand. Okay. Because the turn comes a 2 of clubs, and our 3 better now bets out and gets called by the in position player. He bets out for about 40% pot and gets called. And now the pot has 84,000 in it. Okay. So now what do we range these players at having when we get that sort of action? And when our 10 of hearts comes on the river, completing a straight and missing all the flushes, and this player now goes all in, and he's putting all his chips in.
The player, he's got to have I think he's got a set. He has a set from the beginning.
But is he not afraid of 7-8? Like
No, because I think Weon Coolio has ace 9 or something. He's got a
But
9 in his
he
hand.
could have had 7-8. Is my
Oh,
point.
sure.
So when this guy
Not
goes
as
all in,
likely.
Yeah. He
he's
could.
getting snapped by 7-8, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah,
I'm
he's
just saying.
getting,
Yeah.
I'm saying it's a scary river if you just have a set of 9s. Right?
Yeah.
Or a set of 6s or a set of 4s on the flop.
Yeah.
It's not a good river card for those holdings.
Does he ever have pocket jacks here?
This is the flop
it's
check
possible.
raiser that we're talking about.
It's
Yeah.
definitely possible. It's definitely possible that he has 9s or he has 10s or jacks, and 10s would make a lot of sense too because he hit his set on the river, which would put him, in a position to be all in. He has an overpair, so he could be sitting there with 10s or jacks, like you say. We know he doesn't probably have kings, aces, or queens. I mean, queens would be really weird because Chris had 2 of them, and aces and kings would have, 3-bet pre. So, yeah, the only
Wouldn't
pocket pairs.
Wouldn't this be a check in this spot out of position so that you can make your opponent bluff now, and you're going to bluff catch with your set or with your overpair? Like, what's he making fold? He's not making any hands that beat him are not folding here. Unless he was bluffing with something else that we don't know about.
Right. I mean, it feels to me like if he's targeting ace 9, right? He's
Right.
going too big. And if he's, I don't know. I don't think jacks would lead out here. I mean, it's possible they had jacks, but I don't think they're going to shove with jacks here at the end.
I think they had 7-8.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got to some exciting places with that
That's
one.
fun.
Chris Jones knows how to pull some interesting hands.
How did you go in that tournament, Chris?
Yeah. How'd it go, Chris?
Then I had another really fun hand where I had ace king, and it was a 3-bet pot, and flop came ace 5. Kind of barreled. There was 1 club on the 3-bet pot. Remember, 1 club. It came runner clubs. So the club flush did get there, but I had the ace of clubs, and they had 10-8 of clubs.
Wait, on ace 5?
Ace 5 with 1 club.
So it had to be the 5 of clubs, right? 5 of clubs. And then
Right.
10-8
Yeah.
of clubs.
Yeah. Now, did you see bet that one?
I did.
Okay, well then,
And
that's
overbet-
hashtag
I
bet approved. I think.
Overbet the turn, which they still did not fold to.
No, they hit the gin turn card for them. How could they possibly?
God.
Chris.
So not all of these players were crushers.
No.
You made a note on that guy, right?
Yes.
Against this guy.
Yeah. That'll be great when I'm playing in the next
Venom.
$12 tournament versus the $2,500 one. But anyway.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris, for posting that one.
Goodness sakes.
Thanks to everyone else for their excellent feedback and insight. I love talking poker with this crew. You guys are the best. So I'd also like to thank, of course, Website Mark and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. Keith, Rob, Chris, John, Kim, Jack, and John in the booth. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.